All right, folks, we're going to bring this committee meeting of the Audit Committee to order. The most dedicated of all committees. Do we have any public speakers?
Yes, we do. Omar Vera.
All right, testing. Greetings, MTA Audit Committee. I am back after a 5-month hiatus. Since, now you remember in my speech on January 25th regarding the fare and toll changes, I mentioned that I'm currently working at Google's New York offices organizing micro kitchens. Been there since February 6th. Well, like I said, I'll mention that briefly a little later. But first, let me express my disgust as to the fact that it's been almost 5 months since since Chairman Prendergast stepped down, and they haven't yet found a replacement for who will be the next big boss here at the MTA. I'm also increasingly concerned with the number of delays that have been happening in the subway system, like by this year, like as this year rolls by. I understand like financial issues and stuff, but like in January you started on a high note, but now you're going back downhill, back to the dark days of the 2010 massacre. The W was just restored, and there needs to be some accountability. There needs to be accountability, and look, you're the successors to Chairman Prendergast. You need to uphold his legacy. You need to like maintain good quality service for customers while maintaining a good working relationship with your employees. Like my main manager, her assistant manager, and the manager of a local cafe at Google all maintain wonderful relationships with their employees, myself included. They treat each other like family, and it's time to have more accountability here at the MTA. I don't want to go like you should be maintaining what Chairman Prendergast has maintained for everyone here. You should not be going back to money thrown away, like the bad acronym that Mr. X and others have labeled this over the incompetence of the past. And remember, we're trying to prove Mr. X wrong. So there you go. Okay. With that said, thank you for having me here, and I yield back the balance of my time. Have a good day.
Thank you. Now we have the approval of the minutes. Can I get a thank you? All right. Moving on. Michael, any changes to the work plan?
No, we're on course to complete our work plan as scheduled for the remainder of the year.
Okay. Now with the independent accountants review report.
Yes, Mike Fritz and team from Deloitte are here. Michael.
Good afternoon. I'm here today to present a number of reports to you, but the first report we're going to start with is the Accountant's Review Report for the first quarter ended March 31st, 2017. At this time, we're in the process of completing our review of those financial statements. They are unaudited financial statements. I know that you have received them already in advance. Management's discussion and analysis provides you with an explanation of the changes in the revenues and the operations of the authority over the last 3 months, and I would suggest if you have any questions on the operations, you direct those to Bob or to Pat Kane. We will complete this review of our report once the audited financial statements are issued, which I'll share with you later on.
Thank you, and I think we do need a vote on this, right? So if there aren't any questions, can I get a motion, a second, and... All right, moving on to the 2016 single audit reports.
Okay, the single audit report appears on page 156 of your handout materials. This is our audit of the federal programs and also the state programs that you received in this past year. During 2016, you received approximately $1.7 billion of federal grants, which were subject to audit. And in terms of the federal audit report itself, there was only one significant deficiency that related to some procurement areas as it related to one specific grant program. There are no dollar cost findings relating to that. That actual comment appears on page 158 of the materials. And then secondly, the statewide report, for which you received about $187.9 million of federal funds subject to audit. There was one finding that related to only a reporting of a grant, and that was actually in the first quarter before we had issued our report last year. Subsequent to that fact, you have met every quarterly reporting requirement for the state. So those are the only two comments. Overall, it's a clean state audit report on those federal programs and expenditures.
Good news. Likewise, we need a vote, so if there aren't any questions, a motion second and a vote. All right. Moving on to the 2016 investment compliance report.
That report is a one-page report, and basically what we're doing here is we're auditing your investments in terms of compliance with the state of New York's investment policies and principles. We look at the actual portfolio itself and make sure that the investments you have are authorized to be invested in, and we found no exceptions, so it is a clean opinion on that report.
Excellent. We need a vote on this, so if there aren't any questions, motion second and a vote. All right, moving on to management letters.
In terms of the management letter, here's where I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about the status of the audit as well as the management letter comments themselves. And you will find in the first page of that management letter report that we have, towards the bottom of that page, we have two items for your attention. First of all, what you have in detail here is very consistent with what you've received in the past. And what that represents is deficiencies in internal controls. They are observations where we have tested your internal controls and we have found items that we wanted to bring to your attention in terms of improvements in those areas. That's very consistent, and I'll share with you in a minute in terms of area by area. Secondly, we talk about the fact that as we complete our audit of the financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2016, because there are restatements of the financial statements, that is a strong presumption that there's a material weakness in internal controls. And we will be providing a separate letter to you at your next meeting that will indicate that we believe that there were review and reconciliation controls, specifically at Transit, TBTA, and CERTOA, which then resulted in restatements of those financial statements, and then likewise that then boils up into the overall MTA financial statements. But our concerns are really the reviews and reconciliations at those entities. There were significant changes in management at those entities this past year, and in our prior management letters, you may recall, we've talked about succession planning and the bench strength or lack thereof that you have. I will say on a positive note, at each of those entities, the items that we found were actually brought to our attention by management. So you have new management that's operating in those entities. They were in the process of closing their books and records. They identified some items. They needed some assistance in being able to deal with those. I can't tell you as of today that they're remediated, but I can tell you that it's all as a result of the audit process and them bringing these to our attention that that's where we are. At the present time, we have issued all of the entities except for TBTA. We came to a resolution on one open item on that this morning. So I'm expecting that those financial statements will be issued in the next week to 10 days. Therefore, we can also issue, our goal is to issue the overall MTA financial statements by June 30. So that's kind of an update on that. Any questions on that specific piece before I give you a summary of the comments themselves?
No questions. I would thank you and the MTA staff for your efforts in reconciling some of those issues that have come to light. I'd also say, as I know you all will, it's extremely important that we continue to push forward expeditiously so that we can get the audits actually released in a certified manner as soon as possible. I know you're all working very hard on that, but I want to make sure we emphasize how important that is, of course.
And we do recognize that, and I will tell you, nobody likes these types of situations, but it's a lot easier when management is fully sitting beside you and working with you on those items so that there's cooperation on both pieces. Everybody has the commitment to making sure the financial statements represent, within not an absolute, but a reasonable basis, the financial condition of the MTA. In terms of summary of the management letter comments themselves, you'll see starting on page 6 of that report, comments by various entities. These are deficiencies. Some of them they're consistent. They relate to use of a GFOA checklist and being able to prepare the financial statements to make sure the disclosures are adequate. But there were some areas as it related to password parameters and also terminated user access and change management within your information technology area. There was issues or comments relating to accrued capital expenditures and grants at the MTA level. And we also had some concerns over material and supplies inventory at Metro North Commuter Railroad, as well as, again, succession planning at TBTA. You have management's comments in terms of what they're doing to remedy these situations, and those are included in the report. We agree with what their comments were as it relates to those matters.
Thank you. So I think we need a vote on the letters and our response comments there too.
How long do we normally take to remedy those type of issues outlined in the audit? Obviously, some of them are more difficult than others, for lack of a better term.
Right.
But how long do they normally take to get to completion?
I would say typically they are done within the year. Some of the IT items as it relates to user access and password parameters, those have been there for several years. But maybe to give you an idea of how responsive they are, if you turn to page 46 of that letter, you will see that there were 11 MTA consolidated IT comments last year that we had that have been remediated. There was one BSC comment in terms of invoices not being timely paid, remediated. Transit had 2 that were remediated. Sertoa had 1. TBTA had 2. Transit, Sertoa, and TBTA, absent the material weakness as it relates to the reconciliations, those comments were all remediated. They have no new comments. So they do take it very, very serious, and I know Mike and his team actually sit down and follow up with management on all these comments.
We roll those recommendations into our monitoring plan to make sure they're implemented. And if they're not, we'd come to the committee with them.
Okay, thank you.
If no other questions, a motion, a second, and a vote.
So move.
Moving right along to the MON and the RM update and the ethics compliance program update.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right. Why don't we start with the executive summary? I just want to point out, at this point, we are working on our annual internal control certification summary report, which we will present to this committee in November. All agencies are working on closing any open material weaknesses or significant deficiencies. We are also at the point testing our various internal controls and documenting the associated risk and controls along with that. We continue to have some external drivers, including compliance with COSO 2013. They continue to issue new guidelines and additional requirements from that 2013, which we are also actively ensuring compliance with. In terms of where we stand, as you can see from where we are right now, from where we were from last time we reported, there has been a significant increase in the number of business processes, also associated risks. This is an ongoing process. A lot of this is being affected by various consolidations that are taking place within the MTA. I will tell you, it's my belief that there's probably some duplication because the consolidations are being done, then the duplications are being weeded out after the fact. So this number is going to fluctuate over the next couple of presentations that I give you. Back in November, we had 20 open issues that we reported to you. 15 have been closed. As we sit here today, as the date of this report, there were 5. I was told this morning we're actually down to 4. So that's where we stand as of today. In terms of total controls, we sit at just over 6,000 total controls, with, again, 5 weaknesses, 4 now that reported. So, again, I think this is a good number in terms of where we stand. We were asked to break it down by category. As of right now, all that are remaining are, in fact, safety related. As you can see from the slide, in terms of what we see as significant risk, safety, as you've heard, succession planning, Institutional transformation and cybersecurity are those type of enterprise-wide risks that we're looking at. These are things that are actively going on that we need to be cognizant of and focused on. Do you have any questions for me? Okay. Oh, I think I'm next. Yeah. I mean, you can do that if you like. Okay. This is my report on MTA's Ethics and Compliance Program. I'm going to cover basically three areas: overview, quick overview, details, and future initiatives. If it's all right with the committee, I would kind of skip through the overview. It just talks about structure and alignment. Last year, during the last reporting period, we handled just over 2,000 matters. We obtained a 90% completion rate in our training and certifications. We currently have 51 policies under review. We are increasing the coordination in terms of compliance among the MTA and its agencies. The Ethics Committee met during this period and continue to work on creating all agency approaches to ethics and compliance versus individual agency approaches. We have had some external factors that have played a significant role, and I'll go into how they've impacted us. But the new financial disclosure system has created a number of issues for us across the board, as well as an increased number of financial disclosure filers. We are, again, the program is alive and growing, so we are taking on new projects such as policy lifecycle management. We are in the process of replacing our current GRC system, which is where retain our compliance and ethics records as well as our enterprise risk management records as well. We are managing the organizational change from a compliance and ethics perspective. And we are also looking at global benchmarking now in terms of other transportation organizations have compliance programs and ethics programs, and we're looking to compare ourselves with them. For a long time, we were the first, I believe we were probably one of the first out of the box. Now that there are others, it's a good opportunity for us now to see how they've matured and perhaps what we can do better. So I'm going to skip over the next couple of slides, if you don't mind. It's just organizational structure. So we handled, like I said, over 2,000 issues during the reporting period. Of those, the vast majority, as you can see, dealt with financial disclosures in terms of employees who were not able to get their financial disclosure filings done on time. As I had said before, a good portion of those related to the new financial disclosure system, and a good number of the employees that you'll see in that number are first-time filers. These are employees who have been here 20 years, or more, have never had to file before, received the email saying that you had to file and did what I think many people may have done. No, this can't be right. This can't be for me. Only to find out, unfortunately, it was. A lot of those happen to be represented employees, and we have been working with the union to kind of get the message out that this is, in fact, a requirement that you have to now comply with as well. We had a good number of people making inquiries. As you can see from there, I mean, we handle quite a variety of different things. The last time I gave this presentation, I was asked to break down issues versus inquiries. I had said anecdotally that I thought that we had more inquiries than issues. So luckily I was correct. So there were about 4% were issues. 96% of what we handled were actually inquiries. In order to provide this committee with a little bit better information, we've increased the number of categories that we are tracking. So we've gone from 14 to 20 to give a better view of what we're doing. But in order to compare last period with this period, we recompressed those categories. And again, as you can see, I think everything was relatively steady except those financial disclosures, which created an enormous spike for us last year. In terms of breakdown, about 34% of our inquiries came through New York City Transit. About 22% came through headquarters, with Long Island Railroad or Metro North sitting about the same at 15%. And it breaks down in pretty small numbers. The board's at 0%. So had to include you in the presentation as well. Okay. In terms of where these issues and inquiries come from, the vast majority are coming through email. Our employees are very comfortable reaching out to us via email, followed by in person, just coming into the compliance department, asking questions. 7% come through the ethics helpline, but the vast majority of people prefer to contact us via email. Of the contacts that we have, only 22 individuals asked to be anonymous, did not want to give their name. So to me, this indicates a high level of confidence in our department. They're willing to tell us who they are, to identify themselves so that we can follow through. In terms of training, last year we obtained a 90% completion rate in our compliance training and certification. As you can see, in each one of the courses that we provided, there was an increase in compliance over prior years. Where you don't see a comparison is when we didn't offer the course for a variety of reasons during that period. But steady increases across the board. Same thing with policy certifications, good steady increases, 95%, 88% for an organization of this size and the volume of training in a short period of time that employees have to get this training done. It's a pretty good number. So that's the good news. One bit of not so good news, but with an explanation, is that in terms of our ethics training, we had a 65% completion rate. We enrolled over 8,000 employees in our ethics training, of which just over 5,000 completed. There was a variety of reasons, one of which is that once we enroll somebody, we have, unfortunately, no mechanism to unenroll them at this point in time. So if you retire, you leave service, you're no longer required to take the training because you no longer meet the qualifications, you still end up in that number. Hopefully next year we'll figure out a way to give you a more accurate representation. So if you had backed those individuals out, I think this number would have been higher. But hopefully next year we'll figure out how to do that, and we'll be able to provide that to you. How we communicate. Communication is still important. We do have MTA Today. Every month we're putting articles out, enforcing and compliance, reaching out that we are here. This was an article that we tried to put a friendly face to compliance. So that's why my picture's not up there. So we're trying to make sure people know we communicate through Ethics Helpline. We provide publications and information to senior management to continue to foster a atmosphere in which ethics and compliance is in their minds. Where we're going from here, we are undertaking a process of reviewing agency-wide policies and establishing a unified policy management program going forward. This is a very aggressive project. It affects MTA and all of its agencies. We are looking to consolidate policies into all agency policies wherever possible. We are looking to make sure policies that are old and outdated are revised and updated, and to establish a methodology going forward to manage across the enterprise. We are going to provide some additional training next year in financial disclosure, obviously, lobby law, and fraud awareness. A project that we've been working on for a while, we mentioned it last year, has not come to fruition yet, is to take the paper copy of our Code of Ethics and to make an electronic version of that so that people, when they're working on their iPads or their iPhones, can get the information they want. It can be searchable, it can be indexed. So we're still working on that project. Hopefully we'll have that completed by 2018. Any questions for me?
I assume for those people who were not required to file a financial disclosure form and now are, that one of three things happened. Either the legislature changed the law, JCOPE changed the rules, or they made too much money. The threshold for the dollar amount you have to make to file has not changed in, I would say, maybe 5 years. So every year, more and more employees are going over that. Right. And a lot of them happen to be represented employees who've never had to file before. So it was a little bit of a surprise to many of them. Does anybody tell them that?
We've been working with the union. The union put out some information. We sent emails as well. But our general sense is that when they got this, they assumed it was an error.
Right.
Because, again, they've been here these are long-term employees who had never had to do this before.
So we've talked to them, we've walked them through it. I will say, based upon my information right now, I believe only 15 let it go to the point where they were actually brought up on being delinquent by the commission. But so 400 and plus got it done.
And no one fined by the
So that's
commission?
what I meant, that's 15.
Oh, but fined by the
They were, yes, those 15. They were fined, and then they filed.
Very motivating.
It is a motivation, yes.
All right, thank you very much. Nice work. We'll move on to the 2017 audit plan status. Michael, I think that's you.
Yes, and you have the presentation in your book. I'll go over a few slides as Lamont did. And so in summary, we had a very productive first half. The audit plan was presented to you in January, which you approved. We do about 160 assurance audits during the year and about 200 contract audits. We're on track to complete the audit plan. To date, we've completed 67 projects and 65 contract audits with over 240 recommendations. One of the things we evaluate when reviewing internal controls is also their efficiency and effectiveness, and about 20% of our audits result in identifying opportunities for cost savings and cost improvements, which we share with the CFOs and then take action. One point I would like to go over with you, and we're required to do with our partner, the FTA, that gives us the Superstorm Sandy funds. We're required to audit those costs. To date, we've audited about 20% of the $1.49 billion of grant expenditures the agency has since the storm has occurred. We completed 81 audits, 217 recommendations, which we diligently follow up on with Lamont's office to make sure we are implementing those recommendations. And we've adjusted the cost that we spent by about $58 million. So it's very important to the FTA that we communicate this to the audit committee, and we diligently follow up on these costs for this program in order to get these funds, which is about $3 billion that the MTA will get over the life of the storm. With that, it takes an experienced staff to do audits, assurance audits, and management support projects. I'm glad to say we do stress the importance of certification. As you can see here, there's the certifications that we have in our office, primarily certified public accountants as well as certified internal auditors and certified information system auditors. So we do, and with Juan's help, stress the importance of certification to the staff. So looking ahead, we're going to complete the 2017 audit plan. I'll come back to you in January to show the results of 2017 as well as show you 2018's plan. And we'll continue to support activities important to the agency, such as enterprise assets management, the PeopleSoft upgrades that have been discussed with you, and most importantly, the PeopleSoft pension module as well that we're actively involved with. So with that, that was just a quick status on our activities, but we are on board to complete the plan.
Other questions? Not? Motion to adjourn? Thank you, everybody. See everybody on Wednesday.
Thank you.